David Cameron may be the first British Prime Minister to veto a European treaty. However, he does not want Britain to leave the EU. But quitting Europe is an increasingly popular policy amongst his Conservative grassroots. It remains one of the party's most divisive issues. An exclusive survey for Channel 4 News tonight reveals that 70% of Tory party members would vote to leave Europe, and even more of them want David Cameron to promise an in or out referendum at the next general election. Here's our political editor, Gary Gibbon.
It will be a splendid and decisive yes for Britain in Europe for your generation and the whole of the next one. I like this torch.
Margaret Thatcher campaigning for a yes vote in the 1975 referendum on Europe. In the decades since then, there have been many twists and turns on the Conservative Party's Eurosceptic journey. A new poll suggests it could be turning into a party that ends up rejecting Europe altogether. The Conservative Home website polled 1,600 Tory party members, asking them how they'd vote if there was a referendum on Europe now. 23% said they'd vote to stay in the European Union. 70% said they'd vote to come out. A Number 10 source said this was roundabout where they thought party opinion was. They also added that around 100 Tory MPs would probably vote to come out in an in-out referendum now. But that's not where the Tory party leadership is, and some see this as a recipe for years of tension ahead.
I mean, it could be the issue which haunts the coalition right through to the election. I mean, remember, Maastricht did not bring down John Major per se, but it wrecked the government.
The old division in the Conservative Party was between a majority of members who wanted a fairly Eurosceptic stance and those who wanted to be fully committed to the European cause. What has happened over the last 20 or so years is the opinion has moved massively in a Eurosceptic direction, and the new division, and there is still a division, is between those who want to come out, which are now, I think, the majority, and those who want more Euroscepticism, renegotiation and change in the relationship, but aren't quite willing to go as far as the UKIP stance would.
Conservative Home asked Tory party members what they wanted to be the party's policy on Europe in the next general election manifesto. 17% of those responding said they wanted a renegotiation of Britain's terms of entry, not necessarily followed by a referendum. But 41% wanted a renegotiation of terms followed by an in-out referendum. 42% wanted an in-out referendum, come what may. That combined force, 83% of Tory party members wanting an in-out referendum, could be impossible to resist. A source close to David Cameron says he hasn't fully focused on this yet, but knows it's a train coming towards him. He leans towards setting a later date for an in-out referendum and then going into negotiations to try to win back powers. Many Tory MPs agree with that strategy, but aren't sure it would keep us in Europe.
If we got it right, and we got justice and home affairs back, and if we got foreign affairs back, and we got proper protection on control of the economy, and we cut back on the onslaught, the avalanche of regulation, then I'd probably say stay in.
And what are the odds of them letting you have all that?
Not very good.
To be able to negotiate strongly, you need to have the ultimate sanction that we can go for an in-out.
And if Europe doesn't give you those sort of freedoms, doesn't give you something that is purely a trade agreement, really, which is what you want,
and cooperation of areas of mutual concern, which we've done that for a very long time. Yes, but ultimately, if it's not in the British interest, then yes, I would be pushing for an out vote.
Look closely in the undergrowth and you can see an endangered species. The Conservative Europhile, no fan of the referendum push.
To actually start going on about a referendum now is a useless irrelevance. I just think if people heard that the British were now going to indulge themselves in a 3-week campaign about whether or not they were going to stay members of the European Union, then people would start thinking, you know, the British are just like the Greeks. What are they going to do next?
Pressure from UKIP and parts of the Labour Party is helping to drive the Tories to having an EU referendum commitment. A pledge to have an in-out referendum in the next manifesto now seems increasingly likely. It's the result no one can be sure about. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, at the old Tory headquarters. For now, headquarters of the European Commission in London.